Greetings, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so delighted that you are here with us. At this time, we'd like to turn the mic over to the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Jeanette Altariba, to share remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah-Nee, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeanette Altariba. I'm in the role of Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University at Albany. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Deborah-Nee Pravat for assembling this group today, and thanking everyone who is participating. I know you know something about them. You'll be meeting them as well. Everyone who's taken their time today to put together their thoughts and their remarks to present to us. We have some folks from within the university and others representing the community. So this is really important at this time where we're all being very challenged, challenged in our home, challenged in our workplaces. But it's important to come together to continue to share knowledge and information, to exchange that information. We are very committed at the university and at the college in public engagement and working together with the community, sharing our expertise, helping in the ways that we can, and learning so much from individuals around us. So today we've assembled quite a nice group. The title of the presentations today all fall under the role of race, status, and planning on election turnout success. And we're going to be talking about a number of different areas that overlap, that have to do with thinking about the census. And I know that I myself got a number of different notifications, as I'm sure many of you have. And of course, I filled out my information and went forward. And we all know that this is an election year too. And so there are a lot of implications for different aspects of aid, how groups are organized and so on, based on our representation in terms of the census. And of course, then based on elections and our contributing in that way. I think for many of us, that uncertainty of not really knowing what form some of these things might be taking this year has us thinking and gives us a little pause. But nonetheless, all of these processes are still going to be going forward in some fashion. How do we participate the best that we can? How does our vote or our representation with the census, how does that influence what decisions are made, and how our voices are heard and what we contribute together? So I think this afternoon, together with everyone who's here, we're going to learn a little bit about how all these very interesting areas really do come together. What is our role? How important is that role? What are ways that we can impact? And maybe some of the things that we're going to hear about today are things where we really didn't know that as individuals we would be making such an impact, and we would be actually driving some of our future. I think now more than ever, people are realizing just how important it is to understand how our government works, how it represents us or doesn't represent us. Because in moments of crisis, such as the ones that we're going through now, it's very important for us to know what are our rights, how is it that we understand what officials are telling us that we can and cannot do, how the government is run, how we have a say in or role in, how decisions are determined that are affecting our everyday lives. So I, again, want to thank all the participants today that are going to be presenting to us, the organizers for putting together such an interesting group of folks here with us today. And with that, I'll turn it back over, and thank you to all of you who are listening in and participating and joined us for this webinar this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Altariba. At this time, we'd like to turn it over to the president of the Omicron Epsilon Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Daphne Amilcar Rodriguez. President, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Pravat, and thank you so much for your remarks, Dr. Altariba. This is an awesome opportunity for us to come together, to exchange ideas, to learn, and to see how we can push our voices forward. It's so very important for us to know and understand what the impact is behind our voices. And I believe that the people here in this particular forum can offer us some opportunity to participate, to be participants in this effort, so that we can invoke change in our communities, right? What's in our backyard, in our front yard, where we see different things happening, things that we're not happy about, that we want to be able to shift and to change. It's not only just about voting. And so we have this, we've received these pamphlets, and we've received a mailing, and we want everyone to participate and really to show that, we do have a voice, and our opinions do matter. So I thank all of the participants here today for your time and for your effort and for your energy, just to do a little bit, because together we are stronger. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so very much. And at this time, we'd like to share a very brief video from the president of the university. It's only about 1 minute long.
Hello, my name is Avidan Rodriguez, and I am the president of the University at Albany. Whether you're a college student new to Albany or a longtime resident responding to the 2020 census, it is critical to the future of our communities. This year's census will help to determine the distribution of $675 billion in federal funding throughout the United States. This includes funding for federal Pell Grants that more than 40% of UAlbany students rely on to keep college affordable. A population undercount also threatens critical resources for school lunches, affordable housing, and job training. That is why we at the University at Albany are committed to ensuring that our residents are fully and properly counted this year, including the many college students who call Albany home. Let us work together to ensure that we are all counted in the Census 2020 and to show that Albany counts.
Awesome. And now we'd like to turn things over to the very amazing Andy Lee. Andy Lee has been phenomenal throughout this entire process. And Andy's actually going to be introducing the panelists. Andy's going to be offering the background, and Andy is with the League of Women Voters. And Andy, I really just can't thank you enough for being so wonderful. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get to your thank yous in just a sec. I will introduce myself. I am the chair or director for voter services for the Albany County League of Women Voters. This is my second term in that position. My mom was a member of the League of Women Voters, and it's a nonpartisan, non-governmental group. And my personal concern includes increasing voter registration, voter turnout, and voter education throughout Albany County. I'm especially concerned with the low turnout numbers in the student communities across the county. And we've started building much stronger outreach to all of the higher ed schools in Albany County, as well as the high schools. So to introduce Dr. Deb Pravat, for anyone who is not familiar with this amazing, wonderful woman who has persevered through pandemic and high water to bring this gathering together. Deb is the Assistant Dean for Public Engagement for the College of Arts and Sciences and the Director of the University and the High School program at the University at Albany, and is a member of the Omicron Epsilon Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta. We're very grateful to have Deb here and for her persistence. And I personally am grateful that she's allowed me to participate. And now I would like to welcome each of our panelists. Zoe Bavell is a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau in Albany County. She is part of the New York Regional Census Center. She reaches out to libraries and political leaders, schools, and community and neighborhood organizations to provide information and answer questions about this year's 2020 census. She is a local individual who is well invested in the Albany area, and she works hard to improve communication and connectivity all over the county. Next, we have Dr. Catherine Lawson. She is an associate professor of geography and planning in the College of Arts and Sciences at UAlbany. She has expertise in many fields of urban transportation, including land use connectivity and GIS. She leads the AVAIL team project, the Albany Visualization and Information Lab, AVAIL, which integrates big data with web-based solutions. AVAIL uses census data to provide open source data and maps that represent information that is very up-to-date and efficient for users. Next, we have Ms. Cheryl Simmons, who is a graduate of UAlbany 09, class of 09, and is now the Assistant Director of the Office of Student Affairs. She also coordinates the UAlbany Votes program and is very invested in keeping the university voter friendly. She brings a tremendous knowledge of student power to bear in registering students and encouraging students to participate in elections. Dr. Julia Jennings is an assistant professor of anthropology at the University of Albany. Her main interests include how economic, environmental, and household contexts shape past and present populations. She also has research interests involving the effects of household composition on different aspects of populations. Eva Bass is a community outreach coordinator in the Office of the Mayor of Albany. Eva's work sorry, my computer glasses are wonky here. Eva's work has her reaching out through public forums and panels like this one with the hope of bridging information gaps and listening to and addressing a huge variety of local issues. Eva is concerned with improving access to programming to many of the silent sectors of Albany. Silent. By reaching into these communities, she brings her experience and expertise to bear and helps to improve our city. We also have with us the Honorable Carolyn McLaughlin, who is our county legislator representing the 1st District in the city of Albany. She has a very strong background in science and has worked in public service and leadership for many decades. Ms. McLaughlin sits on the social services and elder care committees and has a special concern for youth services as well. Welcome, and thank you all so much for participating in this conversation. We would now like to invite any students who are on with us to share any questions that they have via the Q&A or chat feature. And these we'll be looking through these as we move forward, and we can share them with the panelists in the Q&A portion that follows. So before we jump into questions for our amazing panelists here, I would like to just give a few fun facts about voting in Albany, and specifically among our young voters, our Gen Z, which range about 18 to 40-year-olds. So there are 2 fun facts to keep in mind on the back burner as we listen to how our panelists see and process some of their own perspectives on these questions. So first off, we have the number of residents in Albany that are over the age of 18 and eligible to vote. It's about 80,000 plus individuals. And the number of voters in the 2017 election was about 52,000. So there's somewhere between 25 and 30,000 eligible adults in Albany who just aren't voting. The number of votes for the winning mayor in the last election, 12,000. 12 out of 80,000. So there is certainly room for more voters to jump in the process. But this year, there are more Gen Z voters than any other group. And in the 2018 elections, there were about 64% turnout for the Gen Z group, and the general population was 53%. So Gen Z really has the opportunity to direct the way that politics moves in the future. And according to some of the most recent polls, which include a Siena poll as well as some of the Pew Research polls, the Gen Z concerns, the most prominent concerns are gun violence, environmental crisis, some of the racial justice issues, sexual harassment and assault. These are some of the issues that our students are thinking about and that frame the way that they may come to voting in our next elections. So with all of that in mind, our first question, and we're gonna ask our panelists to respond in the order that they were introduced. The first question, you each come from a unique and important position, but you all focus on some aspect of understanding human progress. In our society, that means participating in elections and being included in the national census. This is a two-part question. First, what do you think is a key component to turning reluctant individuals into participants? Second, please tell us how you think your work could be or is being used to improve election turnout. You each have about 3 minutes to respond. Zoe.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. I'll try to keep it brief. The first question, what do you think is the key component to turning reluctant individuals into participants? In terms of the census, I believe educating and motivating individuals to respond to the census is key. So educating individuals on why the census is important. Why is the 2020 census important to me? How does it affect my community? How does it affect, my everyday life? And also to continue motivating. The census is safe, easy, and important. You have a variety of ways to fill out the census. So keeping that support up, bridging the gap between information that some individuals may not get is definitely a key component. In terms of how my work can impact elections and things like that, the 2020 census count determines how many seats each state has in the House of Representatives. And that alone is very, very significant in itself. One thing I'd like to point out with the 2020 census, part of our tagline is shape your future, start here, because everything starts with the census data. So in terms of elections and stuff like that, everything is going to start with census data. If you know what the census is about, if you participate in the census, you're opening up the door for new avenues in different things. So that's why we like to say, shape your future, start here. So that's what I have to say about those questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this is Dr. Lawson here, and I certainly support everything Zoe said, but in my work, I've conducted a number of surveys in which response rates are really important, and I found that by making sure I had good information on exactly what benefits the participants could expect, was the best way for me to get good information back and to get the best results. So let me give you an example. In my research in transportation, I conducted a survey of the trucking industry about their issues on the roadways, and I was able to get a 60% response rate because they could actually see that by sharing their experiences, the future transportation plans were going to address their issues. So this is where, supporting what we've heard already, is that we need to reach out to our students with information on how exactly their participation is going to benefit them in their lives, remembering that they are just beginning their careers as they finish up their education and step out into the world, making sure they see that trajectory of how participating now is going to affect them going forward. And with that in mind, my research at Avail, we've produced the capitalregionindicators.org, all one word, .org, data-rich website that makes census data now very easy to access for all our 8 county greater capital region, all the way down to individual census tracts. And nonprofit agencies can use this information to pinpoint issues and assist community leaders with visualizations and even 3D maps to share with the public. And so by turning the data into information, decision makers and citizens can actually see for themselves what and where the challenges are, and more importantly, can monitor the trajectory of the solutions. So as issues are addressed, you can actually follow these outcomes based on what's happening next, what's the data that's been collected. So citizens will be, or the student citizens will be able to get in on the ground floor with their voting decisions and then see the impact of their votes over time using that wonderful census data. All right.
Hi, everyone. So my focus is really on students and specifically students at UAlbany. But what I have found when it comes to helping to encourage students who are reluctant to register to vote or empowered to go out and vote is starting the conversation early. And not only starting the conversation early, but continuing it all the time, not just around elections or really important dates, but all the time. We should be talking about the importance of voter registration and voter engagement in everything that we do, because as our two panelists right before me just said, it starts somewhere. And as long as we continue that conversation, we can show students or anyone really where the power lies. If you have an issue with this hole on your one street, it's not the construction workers' issue, and you might be yelling at them and putting your energy towards that. When you really think about who has the power to make decisions and make changes, that is when you get into the meat of really, really being an engaged voter, because it affects so much more than the things that we even see today. It affects things for the generations to come. So I think having that conversation more often and making it not so much of a taboo conversation, right? That's like what everyone says. Two things you don't talk about at the dinner table is money and politics. But those are the two things that drive so much that happen in our lives. And we should just talk about it the same way we do about the Kardashians. Thank you.
Hi. In addition to all of the great reasons that we've mentioned so far, why folks really should fill out the census, in my own work, I use the census data to understand changes in health and well-being over time. And really, when we talk about health research and health data, census information is fundamental to so much of this research. So in these times, and if you want to know how can I contribute to improving the way that scientists study health, the census is a quick and easy way to get that done, in addition to all these other great benefits like voter turnout, representation, social services, and all the things we've mentioned so far. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I want to tie in everything everyone said about education. I feel that that is a number one thing that we need to focus on when it comes to informing people about their rights, about the platforms that are available for their voices to be heard. In my work, what I do is I educate the youth and the community members who are interested in just their rights on what platforms do you have, how to access the Common Council. I center the work that I do around the social terms of health and just connecting the things that people are going through with the social terms of health, and then them understanding how that really impacts them with a political or a well, this is all political, let's be real. So just connecting people and educating them on how their voice matters and what platforms they have to be able to amplify their voices and be more active in latch on to the people who are their representatives, whether it be a Common Council member, whether it be a legislator, whether it be me as a community outreach coordinator, the mayor, just knowing that they have access to those people, if not to voice their concerns, also to be a part of and give input to the things that are going on in their community.
Carolyn McLaughlin?
Yes. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. And as at the beginning of the conversation, when you were giving out some of the data from the last mayoral election, as someone who participated as a candidate in that election, it really sort of gave me, I don't know, some angst there as I thought about 12,000 out of 80,000 people that were eligible. They sort of contributed to my losing. But anyhow, all that being said, I do believe, and that means a lot. I've run in 7 elections, and that was one of 2 that I had lost. But so I have a real personal connection to this in terms of trying, and that's the word for me. We've got to make elections and the census personal. You have to let people understand now more than ever, both these activities have got to be a part of your life. The census has got to be a part of your life because all of those issues that are being negatively impacted by the pandemic right now, education, housing, employment, transportation, all of those things are dependent on our particular community in terms of the funds that we're going to get, are dependent on how many people are counted here. So now more than ever, you need to be counted. And as we go out and talk to people, as we make whatever connection we can with people, particularly by participating in activities such as this, we try to emphasize that. Look at your children, look at your future, what you're trying to do as a young person coming out of college or in college. If you're going to plan for the future, you got to vote now. If you're going to plan for the future, you've got to be a part of the census now. And some of the organizations that I'm a part of, and as a member of the legislature, we have a legislative Black caucus, and we are doing whatever we can to make ourselves available to participate in forums such as this, to educate people on how important they are individually and collectively to make sure that our community moves forward. We've been affected by COVID-19 and we're calling that a pandemic, but I heard someone say a couple days ago that we've been suffering from a pandemic of poverty and racism in our communities in particular for decades. And this has just pulled the cover off of it, shined a light on all the things that we're dealing with in our community. And if you want to be a part of the solution, costs you nothing. Fill out the census form, costs you nothing. Go and vote. And this year, the governor of New York State has issued an executive order that says that everyone will get an application for an absentee ballot. So there's no excuse. They're even providing you with a self-addressed stamped envelope to send that application back. But you have to send the application back before you can get the actual ballot. So please don't ignore that. Just like you don't ignore the census, do not ignore the absentee ballot application. Everyone is equally important in both of these activities.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to say, yes, that was very compelling. I hope Dominique Luke put in a question, and I think that your answer was very apropos to hopefully giving her some answers as well. So we're going to move on to individual questions. We're going to start with Eva Bass. I want to ask, your work in the community has focused on not just surviving inequality, but establishing balance and inclusion to better connect underrepresented people. These same communities are some of Albany's lowest turnout areas. What would you like to say to these individuals to encourage them to participate in our elections? And are there activities that you think existing NGOs, non-governmental organizations, including voting rights organizations like the League of Women Voters, should be doing to address this population in specific?
Thank you. So for the first part of the question, things that I do in my capacity to help empower people to be more proactive in their civic duty is one, access to information. I'm working very hard to make sure we provide resource guides, information, helping at our administration with Mayor Sheehan is really trying to bring things to the 21st century, so people can access things online, so people can be able to access our public access channel, Facebook, all of those kind of avenues and platforms to be able to engage. Well, before COVID-19, I am responsible for doing monthly Rotunda events where not only do we have celebrations within different cultures, but we also have different panels and platforms where we have conversations and dialogue regarding different disparities, food and insecurities, inequities in every level, so that people can then join that conversation, get some education on what they can do within the city to be able to be a part, voice their opinion. Some people can serve on boards. Neighborhood associations are a great way to be able to voice your opinion because they have a whole larger conversation that includes all of the neighborhood associations so that people can voice their opinions and give feedback on what's going on in their communities. The second part of the question was, let me look again. Can you repeat the second part of the question? Oh.
Whether there were activities that you think existing NGOs, including voting rights organizations like the League, should be doing to address that population in specific in the Albany area?
Yes, there are. There are many nonprofit organizations and community leaders that create platforms like neighborhood associations. Also, we have different Latino organizations like Centro Cívico and the National, the NCL, it's the, I don't know the acronym, but there's a Latino organization on Central Avenue that helps to have different conversations. There's a refugee roundtable for our refugees and immigrants. There's a lot of different platforms where people are able to tap into community leaders who can help them educate themselves, give them give them different education on language access and things like that. We also have our legal aid, that is some free legal aid that is available in the city of Albany. They have the Legal Project and legal aid that can help people direct them in their rights. And if they have questions about what their rights are or what can I do or what can I not do? I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you'll be hearing from me in the near future so that I can help in ways that we have not yet even thought to start reaching out to. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Lawson, in your studies, the issues of travel time and travel use stand out. The absentee ballot is not without some hurdles, including time investment and access to the internet, or traveling to drop off or pick up for people who are not comfortable with mail. So there are some interesting twists even on the absentee ballot and the request form thereof. Do you think that the governor's order to lift the excuses, because traditionally New York does have excuse-based absentee voting, to allow New Yorkers to vote by absentee ballot will increase voter participation? That's the first part. And the second part is, what solutions would you suggest to people who say that they just don't have the time to vote?
All right. Well, since the ability for everyone to vote by mail is something new here in our state, I'm going to respond with some information from a state with a long history of using this method. Oregon made the decision to use the vote by mail, which they call VBM. We all like to have our acronyms, in the late 1980s. And we have some statistics on what happened with their efforts. For example, in June of 1993, their first special statewide election by mail had a voter turnout of 39%. But by November of 2004, for their presidential general election, the voter registration was exceeding 2 million and 86% participated in the VBM, which I find pretty impressive. Now, this was, again, a while ago. We've all become much more acquainted with all the new bells and whistles and lots of things that we do. But by mail still may be something that is actually going to help us increase the voter participation. So I'm hopeful that New Yorkers reflect on how successful the VBM can be and either match or exceed what we've done before. And I'm hopeful they will be able to exceed it. Again, because of the convenience, even with having to learn some new things. And I absolutely want to emphasize, don't forget to send back your information so they send you the ballot. I think that was a very good point earlier. Now, with those folks that do decide that they still want to vote, and what is the time constraints for that? In transportation planning, we deal with people's perceptions of time and the trade-offs they have to make when they go about their daily activities. So oftentimes these costs are influenced by people's experience. For example, well, we may say that we don't have time. What we might actually mean is, I really don't know how long this will take or even where I'm going. So providing good information for people, for example, we now have on your phone the information from Google. What's the walking time? What would be the time to take the bus? How long would it take me to drive to where my voting location is from wherever I am at the time I decide to vote? And how long will it take for them to vote would make it more convenient for them to know the time commitment that they're going to be facing. So taking away some of that uncertainty, I think, will help people feel more comfortable with that question, do I have time? And another concern we know in transportation is safety. Can they safely walk to their voting location? Is it well lit? Are there sidewalks that are clearly marked? And will there be sufficient foot traffic to increase their perception of safety? So in today's COVID-19 circumstances, these issues of time and even more concerns about actually social distancing adds more uncertainty. So I would expect people to actually decide to vote by mail, given the fact that we have these uncertainties now, and the importance of voting at this time. I do agree that it's really becoming clear to people that their lives are something they need to have as much control over as they can, and voting and participating in the census is one of those ways.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lawson. Just to clarify a little bit, New York State does not yet have a VBM system. A VBM would allow the Board of Elections to shoot ballots directly to people without going through an application process. So New York State is a few steps behind still. It would require an amendment to the New York State Constitution, which will take a few years. And in addition to that, I believe that they go through, they quote, purge the voter rolls, and they ensure that only, currently registered voters would then receive a ballot, which in effect is what that application is. So what all registered New York State voters will receive is a ballot application. And as mentioned, I believe by our good legislator, you have to fill that out, you have to send that back, and once you've done that, they will process that and send out ballots anywhere from 30 to about 7 days before the election, and then you have to turn around and send that back, and it will come postage paid. So that will make it easier. You can leave it for your mail carrier. Okay. Zoe Bavel, I wanted to get back to the census a little bit and say that the census plays a key role in the way that our community is defined. As you mentioned, it affects the reapportionment of our House of Representatives. It affects redistricting at the state and local levels, and resource allocation at every level. Demographic data that accurately represents the Albany area is integral. It is integral, as you mentioned earlier. So the first part for you is, what do you want to say to people who are reluctant to fill out the census? And I think that this will maybe finish off the question that was asked in the Q&A session, in the Q&A chat area. What do you want to say to people who are reluctant to fill out their census, who may be thinking it just doesn't matter? And the second part is, could you briefly give us some examples of the kinds of local partnerships that the census, that you in particular, the Census Bureau locally has developed to ensure the most accurate count?
Okay, yes, thank you. So for the first part of the question, if there's 3 takeaways that people take away from this webinar about the census, it's going to be that the census is safe, easy, and important. Okay, the census is safe. Under federal law that's called Title 13, us at the Census Bureau cannot give out any information, personal identifiable information. We have to keep all your responses safe, and that's under federal law. If we break that law intentionally, unintentionally, whatever the case may be, we are subject to a $250,000 fine, up to 5 years in federal prison, or both. So that is a hefty, hefty, hefty price that we have to pay if we don't keep your information safe under Title 13. The census is easy. Never before. I know we've broken a lot of ground in terms of history. We're living in a pandemic. You know, we're doing a lot of different things in history right now. The first time in history, individuals can respond to the census online. Now, that's a game changer for many individuals who say, you know, I don't have time to fill out the paper mailing. I just don't have time. I need something quick. You can do it on any mobile device. You can do it on a cell phone. You can do it on a tablet. You can do it on your laptop. So it's easy. So you can do it online. You can call over the phone. And in online and over the phone, we have many different language supports. If language is not or if English is not your native language, we have many different supports. So that's online, over the phone, and through the regular paper mailing. If you prefer to fill it out via paper, you have that option. So we have many, many options to fill out the census. So that covers the easy. And thank you so much, Honorable Carolyn McLaughlin, for what you said about the census. It's absolutely important. Now more than ever with COVID-19, we're relying on our healthcare workers. We're relying on our nonprofits. We're relying on all these individuals to carry us through. They need resources, and how those resources are distributed is specific to population. A brief example, say you go to a restaurant with, you have 20 people coming, and you tell everybody, okay, we're going to a restaurant, everyone needs to RSVP so they know how much food to feed us. You know, you show up, 20 people show up, but only 10 RSVP'd. The restaurant still needs to feed all 20 of you, but now we have to cut everything in half. So now not only are we not getting our fair share, that's a little bit frustrating, you know, for the restaurant. It doesn't serve anybody any good at that point. So if I want people to think about the census that way, think about your everyday life, you know, before COVID-19, your commute, or if you're still, you know, commuting wherever. You get on a bus, you get in your car. Highways, where highways are built, how much money we have for roads. I know people know Albany, we have a lot of potholes. Money for that, to fix potholes comes from the population count. So if we don't participate in the census, we're losing out on those crucial federal dollars for that. Bus routes, that's determined by population. You know, there may be a bus stop way, way farther from your house than, you know, you expected. That's determined by population count. How much money we have for those transportation systems is determined by the census count. We all need food. Think about food in grocery stores. Businesses and corporations use census data to determine, you know, where they're going to build a grocery store, what type of food, how much food they need. It's crucial. So imagine if we have, you know, areas where, you know, people haven't responded to the census, we're basically invisible. If you don't respond to the census, you're voluntarily saying you're invisible and that your needs are not important. And I know everybody doesn't feel that way about themselves. So you have to respond to your census. Again, 3 ways: online, over the phone, or via mail. Super, super easy to respond by yourself, you know, on any device. So that's what I would like to say for that first part. And I know, let me see. Dominique asked the question of what, you know, to say to convince people. You're a trusted voice. You know what speaks to your community. What do you do to your community? What effects do you have? For different people, it's going to be different things, but I guarantee you, whatever you do in your personal capacity or official capacity, census information, census data can be tied in some way or another. That's again why our tagline is shape your future, start here, because if you trace it back, it all starts with the numbers. So that's what I would like to say. And for the second part of your question, examples of partners that we have, I don't want anybody to get mad, because if I have to shout out everybody, we're going to be here until midnight. So we have various partners all over Albany. Of course, we have the city. Of course, we have our county legislators. We have our council members. We have nonprofit organizations. We have individual community leaders like Jamil Hood and Mr. Lajas. We have Albany Community Action Partnership. So many, many different individuals play a role in helping us get the count up. The NAACP has been instrumental. So anybody is a partner, because you're a trusted voice. So anybody can help us with that. It's not over yet. We still, have a long way to go in terms of response rates. So if anybody wants to partner with the Census Bureau, just shoot me an email and we can get the ball rolling. We have a lot of different resources to help people disseminate information specific to what you do in your personal and official capacity. So if anybody wants to know, just let me know and we'll get the ball rolling. I also like to mention that on 2020census.gov, there is a specific tab for partners only, or anybody who wants to be a partner, and it has many, many, many different resources, from videos down to PDFs. Anything you can think of is on that website. So that's what I like to say. And I want to say thank you to all our partners who are maybe listening on the line, and everyone on here right now is a partner. So thank you so much, for having me and let me be able to say why the census is so important on this platform. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe. And I'm just going to say I did fill out my census. It was super easy, and it makes for some very interesting dinner conversation as well. You can go through it during a family dinner and really enjoy hearing what different members of your family consider, this or that, and let the kids participate a little bit and have a voice as well. Next, we have Dr. Jennings. Thank you very much for being here again. You've explored family economy, and you have a very deep understanding of how family composition affects decision-making. First part of your question, do you think intergenerational living affects voter turnout? And the second part, do you think that the new laws passed, the 2019 slate which was a large slate of voter laws that were passed, will help increase voter turnout, such as early voting? Thank you.
Thanks. So for the first part of the question, we know that many people live in intergenerational households. And another great thing about the census is that it doesn't just count numbers of people, which is so important to know that number, to know how many people are living in our community, but it also, as you know, you fill it out as a household, and that gives us information about the types of families and households that live in our area as well. And different kinds of households have different kinds of special needs. And it's important that you're not only representing yourself as an individual, but as the kind of family and household that you live in. So for example, households with young children might have different needs than households with young adults, or especially those intergenerational households that might be facing both childcare and elder care at the same time. So it's important to participate in the census, not just to count your numbers, but to count, this is what my group looks like. This is what my family, what my household looks like. With that said, family relationships, as I'm sure everyone knows, are complicated. But one thing that might help with civic participation in the census and in voting is to talk about it as a family, to make it a group activity, a tradition, something that, the people in this household, we vote, we participate in the census because we know how important it is for the resources that we need. I know it can be tricky if you talk politics with family, but that aside, having that as an activity you participate in together might increase voter turnout as well. But to reiterate the same message, fill out that census for representation, not just for you and for your numbers, but for your household and family as well.
Thank you very much. That was terrific. And I think it does speak to how complex some of our community families are. There are people living alone. There are people living with one partner, people on their own with kids, people, there's just this whole melange of what family looks like. And I think that you're exactly correct that the census is the number one way that we can really help create services that fit the needs of people instead of trying to fit people into the services that exist. So thank you very much for that. Cheryl, you're going to wrap up our individual questions. Students on campus run the gamut in their interests and participation in government, politics, and in voting. It's easy to engage the students who are interested, but part one, how do we reach into communities of students who are unengaged and convince them of their importance in this process, as well as the census? Given that voting, second part, is more complicated for students than for the average voter, which it is, what voting legislation do you wish for that might increase student participation?
Okay, so I'm going to try my best to keep this just a few minutes. As you can imagine, all the questions here could probably have their own TED Talk and another Q&A afterwards. But for students on campus, it is easier to engage the students that are already in that realm. But I think for engaging students that are well, I don't remember the word that you used, but that are not already in the mix. I'm sorry. Someone has decided to mow my lawn, which is very sweet. I just don't know who it is or why, and it's making a lot of noise. But to engage students that are not already in the realm of civic engagement, I think we just have to meet them where they're at. A lot of the times there are, especially on our campus, students are already being engaged in what I or you and I would call civic engagement. They don't even realize it, right? When they're upset about how police are treating students on campus and how they're being treated when they go into the city of Albany and all these other things. There's so much that they're so very passionate about, and they don't consider it as civic engagement, but it really is. So as I said earlier, having those conversations like regular table talk, it's not taboo. It allows for students that may have not considered themselves as into politics or anything like that to have those conversations and be engaged with students that are, and not be intimidated by that conversation and not feel like they're less powerful in that conversation. And then we utilize the students that are engaged or that know that they want to do that work, and we use them as ambassadors to help meet their students in their classrooms and their dorm rooms and out at the bars or wherever they may be. And we encourage them to have those conversations and have events that are attractive to students that are not considered civically inclined. It's really quite fun. I hope that answered the first part of your question, right? Ambassadors, and then showing people that their passions and their interests is civic engagement. It's all connected, whether it's sustainability, whether you care about what happens on campus or what happens in your hometown. It's all under the lens and the umbrella of civic engagement. Now, as far as, what was the second part of the question again? I'm sorry.
Just, if you could create legislation, if you yourself could make any legislation come through legally, what would you wish for that would increase student participation?
So to answer that question, I think it would be helpful if I just kind of laid out how challenging it is for a student at a university away from home to vote in general, to register to vote. It's not easy to navigate, and many of our students are first generation college students. And I think someone on the panel said it earlier, but I believe that voting and civic engagement is generational, right? I can't do something adequately if it hasn't been presented to me at some point. So if you're a first generation college student, you've never had to fill out an absentee ballot application. You're not really quite sure what it does. And then someone at a university says, oh my gosh, you have to do this awesome thing to be involved. You do it, check box, put it in the mail. And, you know, I can tell as many students as I want, wait for that absentee ballot, send it, it's already pre-stamped, all that cool stuff. I can say it 1 million times, but the reality is we are dealing with a generation of college students that want instant gratification. Great, I want to be involved, I'm feeling empowered right now. You're telling me I have to fill out that form? Great, I filled it out, check, on to the next thing. So again, it goes back to continuing to have those conversations over and over so people realize, and by people, I mean my students, they realize that it's not just a one-step thing. And then if I could change anything, I don't pretend to take on New York State because we have the most challenging voter registration voting laws in the planet, and they change quite often. And I work with some of you guys on the panel here just to figure it all out so that we can translate it to our students. But what I would really, really like is for voter education and registration to be institutionalized at the university. It shouldn't be a question, it shouldn't be 1/4 of a full-time job to disseminate this information across an entire campus full of thousands of students coming from hundreds and hundreds of different counties. It should be institutionalized. So when you register for college, in your admittance letter, are you registered to vote? And some information about where to register to vote. And I saw a question here a little bit earlier. I think it was Aya. She said, I know with me personally, I went to undergrad at University of Albany. However, I am from Queens. Me too, homegirl. I'm registered to vote in Queens. However, registering to vote and voting was always confusing because on campus, they would have us, even though we were already registered at home. Do you know how that works specifically? If you are away at college, if you would be eligible to vote? I mentioned an absentee ballot, but you could, all sorts of stuff. This is literally almost every student on our campus. It's very, very, very confusing. One of our first conversations during orientation, when we are invited to present during orientation and presentations, is where do you feel most passionately about? Do you care about the laws that control things that happen on your street at home? Or would you be more apt and concerned about the laws that dictate what happens here when you live on campus or in the areas surrounding our campus? So we have that conversation very early, but I can't have that conversation with every student that comes in. Our ambassadors can't have that conversation with every student. There's 18,000 students. At orientation, there's nearly 3,000 students. It needs to be something that's institutionalized just the same way as you register for classes. It should be a question or a conversation about voter registration and engagement so that it's clear, the same way every other process at the university is clear. I'm quite passionate, as you can tell. I hope I answered your question. If you know anyone that's still at UAlbany or you're at UAlbany, email me, call me, come to my office. I will help you out.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And as you mentioned, it is harder for students. When we go through the voter registration form, I will spend a minute and highlight where that piece comes in on the registration form itself so that people can hear that happening.
I forgot to mention something really short. Sorry about that. We also have tools on campus that we use to make the voter registration process more simple for our students, and we utilize a platform called TurboVote, which I could probably talk 20 minutes about, but it really helps with the voter registration process. And I know, Andy, we talked about that last fall as well, but there's so many nuances to even just a student living on campus because our campus is split up into 3 different districts. So it's quite challenging, but thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's very true. And only some of those districts are low turnout. I just thought I'd mention that. It's sort of interesting. So we're going to do closing statements, and I think we will go back to our original order, which puts, I think, Zoe first. Is that okay? So it'll be Zoe and then Dr. Lawson and let's see, and then Cheryl, and then Julia, Eva, and then Honorable McLaughlin.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So in closing, if there's a takeaway, again, the census is safe, easy, and important. 10 minutes to fill out the census is going to affect the next 10 years of your life. Let that sink in. 10 minutes to 10 years. I think that's a fair trade-off. 10 minutes of my time right now affecting the next 10 years of my life. What will your city, what will Albany look like in 10 years if we don't get adequate funding? What would that look like? What would Albany look like if we did get adequate funding? So just think about that. Know that your answers are always safe, and protected with us. And this is all of our responsibility. We have many, many, many partners who help us, disseminate the census message. So thank you so, so much. But it's all of our responsibility, to fill out our census and to spread the message. So I want to thank everybody for their time. Thank you for having me on this discussion. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Zoe. Okay, Dr. Lawson? Make sure you've unmuted.
I may have gotten accidentally muted.
You're
We
good.
can hear you, Dr. Lawson. You're all set.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Great, okay. All right, so just looking at where we are today, when we are thinking about this next opportunity to vote, some of the things that I think about as a planner is that from the local decision makers who guide our neighborhood development decisions to the national leadership that address the overarching issues such as our housing policy, our transportation policy, now emergency preparedness and national security, these all need to be reevaluated and perhaps realigned with our emerging issues, with our health. And all of these decisions seemingly need to be made at the same time. So as I speak for the planning community, we're ready to act. Our land use planners, our transportation planners, our emergency preparedness and hazard mitigation planners, but the citizens, we need the citizens, particularly our students, to help us identify the next generation of leaders, being leaders themselves, voting themselves, and helping us get into tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that Dr. Jennings, no, who's next? Cheryl, you're next. Make sure you unmute.
There we go. Given that I just went over time, I'm gonna keep this super, super short. I think that engaged students equal engaged citizens of their cities, their towns, their states, the country. So we have to start a little bit earlier. And if we don't catch them right now, we have to do a lot more work to catch them as adults when they're more distracted by life that's happening to them. If we all continue to collaborate and share resources and efforts, I think that we could really make a real impact in how our youth is turning out to vote.
Excellent, thank you very much. And now Dr. Jennings.
I'd just like to, encourage everyone to fill out the census, to vote in these elections. As a scientist that uses census data, I want to thank you in advance for taking those 10 minutes to fill out the census. It helps us know so much about the population of our region and of our country. And it's a primary source of information for asking any type of question, from is who lives where to beginning to understand how that population is distributed and how it affects our lives. So please take the time, fill out the census for you and your family and your community. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, Eva Bass, you are up.
Okay, in closing, I want to first thank everyone who has joined, and I appreciate anyone who does watch this in the future, because this is a very important message. I want to make sure I encourage everyone to utilize their platforms to be able to have their voices heard, as well as connect to all of your representatives on every level so that you are fully informed about what's going on in your communities. And specifically to my college students, the City of Albany wants you to know that you are residents of the City of Albany. Your voices do matter, we do care, and we do want to hear. There are different platforms you guys do have, especially with you Albany. You do have a Common Council member I can connect you with. You do have a Common Council president I can connect you with. I am your community outreach coordinator, and I want you guys to know that you matter, your concerns matter, and we want you to make sure not only do you vote, but you're counted in census. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our final statement is going to be from the Honorable McLaughlin. Thank you very much.
Again, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. And I just want to say, it might be cliche-ish, but you are the change that we're looking for. And be the change that you're talking about. And you can do that by participating. And I also want the campus to know, I've had in the past numerous opportunities to come to various college campuses around the Capital Region and to actively engage with students. And I know that my colleagues are available to do just that. Because if we're going to have resources to do all the things and address all the requests that we get from the community, you've got to help us get those resources. And the way you do that is to fill out the census. And the way to make sure that your concerns are heard, you have to vote. And be an active participant. Do not self-select out of opportunity by not participating. Because if you don't participate, you don't exist to people. You do not exist if you're not counted. That's either in the census or in voting. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. That applies to the census as well as the attention that you're going to get from political leaders in your community. And students, you can change the world. I'm expecting you to do that. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And I'm always available, as I stated, and my colleagues, to speak to any groups where we can share and lend a voice, lend some education, and lend support to whatever it is you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very quickly, I'm going to try and run through the actual voter registration form. This one is on the New York State Board of Elections site. You can fill the entire thing out online. And then, so I'm going to try and figure out right now how we do the easy screen share on this. How does that look? Does that look okay? Okay. So basically, you're just going to run through it. There are numbers in the boxes on the left-hand column. The first box is the most important box. And if you are not a citizen, you're going to click no, and then you're going to walk away. You're not going to fill this out. You're going to break federal law if you fill out and register to vote if you're not a citizen of the United States. So you have to click yes, you are a citizen. If you are not a citizen, don't fill it out. There are some questions following that. Will you be 18 years of age on the date of the next upcoming elections? And if you say no, that's fine. You should say no if you won't be 18, but you will be 18, say in the coming 6 to 18 months, because now you can be 16 years old and pre-register. So this just allows the Board of Elections to prioritize how they input some of this information. The complicated piece of this is coming up. The qualifications are pretty straightforward. You're going to fill in your name. If you have a suffix which comes at the end of your name, junior, senior, third, fourth, anything like that. So I filled this out incorrectly, right? Last name only. So I'm going to go back and fix that. It's easy to do. You need to fill out your birth date. You need to fill out the month, the date, and the year, and that's it. The rest of these, gender and email and phone number, are optional. It does help the Board of Elections if you put something in there that they can contact you. If something is incorrect, they can get in touch with you and do that. Now, the address where you live and the address where you receive mail, this is the key pivot that holds a lot of people up. Okay, if you're a college student from Queens and you are at the University of Albany, you first have to decide where you would prefer to vote. If you choose to vote in Queens, you're going to vote by absentee ballot. And that's a pretty straightforward event. You register to vote on this form. You're going to put in, you know, your information, and it's going to be Queens, New York, okay? And you pick your county. Whoa, apologies. Okay. Queens County is in, Queens is in, someone help me out here. Queens is in, it's not in Suffolk
New York
County.
City, New York City.
Oh, so it just goes under New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. If you receive your mail at school at the University of Albany, then you're going to put that in here. So then you're going to put in whatever the actual address is and your zip code, okay, in Albany. So that's pretty straightforward. If you're going to choose to vote in Albany and let go of the Queens voting connection, which you can change. Next year when you vote, you can choose to go a different way. You have to re-register to do that, but it's this hard. It's not that hard. Then you're going to put your SUNY address in this first box. And instead of Queens, it's going to be Albany, New York, and Albany County. Okay, and then you don't need to fill this out at all because your full address is going to be in the box above. Okay, if you've never voted before, you just keep going. Has your voting information changed? Nothing's changed. And then you get down to identification, and you do have to try to provide some identification. The Board of Elections will check and make sure that you are a legitimate resident of the state of New York. So, you know, most people know the last four of their social and put that in there, and that's all you need. You don't need two forms of ID, you just need one. If you have your driver's license and you don't know the last four of your social, you can put that in there, or DMV ID is also totally valid. Even if you just have your permit, it's all the same number. So you can put that number in there, or you can use the last four of your social, one or the other. Box 14 is very important. You do have to select either to belong to a party and which party you would choose, or you can select no party. But you have to tell them that you don't want to be in a party at this time, okay? And again, you can change that later, but for the moment, you have to pick something. If you want to vote in primary elections, you're pretty much going to have to pick one of the top two, okay? Green Party is great. It's very, you know, pro-enviro. It's great stuff. They very rarely have a primary. So if you want to vote in a primary election, you really have to vote either Republican or Democrat. If you want to be independent, that means no party, okay? That does not mean that you are voting independents. This is not the same as being an independent, okay? So that's a little confusing. If you want right away to, you won't need to for this upcoming election because they're going to send these applications, the absentee ballot applications, to all registered voters, but you can also ask for that here. You get paid about $150 if you have the whole day free to be an election day worker. You get paid for that. You get paid to be trained for that. It's a long day. It goes from about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So you can check that here if you want to do that. You have to sign this and date it. And on my computer, I can't do that. And you can't submit this electronically. So what you need to do now that you've done filled the whole thing out, you print it, it will print fully filled out as you just did it. Then you sign it, date it, and you mail it in. So here's where you're gonna fill in the address where it's going to. This is where you're gonna put your address, see, right here. You gotta stick a stamp on it over here. And all of the county addresses are printed right on it. Okay, so that's all on page 2. Most printers will print it as either page 2 or on the back side. And you just look up, you know, if you're from Lewis County or you're from Oneida County, you just look it up and add that in there. Okay, so hopefully that clears up some questions about that. The next thing that we have is a quick look at, and now I'm gonna stop my screen share here. We have a quick look at any questions that were not yet answered.
Can I add a tidbit before you move on?
Absolutely.
For University at Albany Humans, as I mentioned before that we utilize TurboVote. What TurboVote does is it gives you election reminders as well. You can still go through the process of completing the voter registration form as Andy just demonstrated for you all, but also consider signing up for TurboVote. They will literally send you a text or email, whatever information you put in there, 3 days before a scheduled election. It reminds you of the polling location, or if you selected to receive an absentee ballot, it reminds you to send that back before the due date. It's been really, really instrumental in increasing our voter engagement on campus, and we are continuing to encourage students to sign up for that. Also, if you are any human at all, you can sign up to get those election reminders too. It's very handy. And we also have a website, thankfully, due to all of our partners and our committee at the university, we now have a fully dedicated UAlbany Votes website. It's albany.edu/vote, where you can find all of this information, the voter registration forms, instructions on how to complete your absentee ballot application and what to do afterward. Basically, everything you need to know about voting is on that website. Please go there. It'll be updated often. Thank you.
Say that website again.
albany.edu/vote. It's not very pretty. We've literally just launched it right before we were trapped in our homes, but all the information is there. We're still working on adding logos and making it really attractive looking, but the information, the important stuff is there, and it's very easy to navigate.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Cheryl. So we have 2 questions that are both census related. Zoe, prepare yourself. The first one is, how are we doing in reaching people who do not have internet capacity, except for maybe a smartphone, or don't feel comfortable using the internet? What are the specifics? You did mention quickly earlier, but if you could just give us about a minute or so.
Yes, so if people don't want to respond to the census online, that's why they have 2 other options. So you have the option to respond online, you have the option to call over the phone, or you have the option to fill out the census via paper and mail it back. So that's up to you, whatever your prerogative is. And the fact that we have so many different options really speaks to how important it is. We understand at the Census Bureau, everybody's day-to-day life is different. You might have to fill out your census online because you just don't have the time, or you're always on the go, or you really don't want to do it online. That's not your niche. You want to do paper mailing, you have that option as well. So there are 3 different ways you can fill out your census form. You can self-respond online, over the phone, or via paper.
Thank you very much. The second question is kind of an interesting one because, okay, the question says, we at Albany branch of the NAACP have been doing extensive work on the census. I believe partnering with each other will make the efforts even more successful. And I think that's extremely important to recognize that some of that community outreach can talk to people, that people hear their own community members in a way that they don't necessarily hear from the mayor's office. They just don't hear it the same way. And I'm not entirely sure if it's a trust issue or some other level of communication that is happening, but I think it is very true. And so I think the question is, you know, if the Census Bureau is the Census Bureau using some of those community resources to get into maybe the least represented currently, like the most silent portions of Albany community?
Yes, the question is absolutely. So those are going to be our low response areas. So we call it complete count committees, is how organizations come together, work together, and disseminate, you know, census information, how they see fit for their community. So organizations can be complete count committees by themselves. You can lock arms with other organizations and form complete count committees, but essentially, you know your demographic, you know the population you serve the best. So however you see fit to, you know, disseminate that information, we're asking you to do that. We're asking you to help us. That's why we call you a partner. We provide you with the information, but we do need your trusted voice. We do need your expertise. We do need your help in disseminating that message in a way that people will receive it. So that's why we empower our partners. That's why we empower, you know, everybody who's on board in disseminating the census message. You can work together, you can work separate, you can do both. There's really, you know, we empower you to do whatever you feel is best for your community. And the NAACP has been tremendous throughout all regions, helping us disseminate that information.
And I just want to piggyback on that. Zoe started out early last year, getting around into the community of Albany and giving anyone who would listen the information about the census. And I was in several different places where I watched her give presentations. And different groups are working together. And individually, as legislators, I know we've been given information that we can personalize to send to our constituents, because people are going to respond to those who look like them, who they do have that trusted, have some history with. And if people who heretofore have not filled out an application, even if they have difficulty saying, I don't know how to do it, they're more likely to say that to me than they're going to say it to someone else. They're more likely to say, will you help me? So it's important that we if I'm asking you to do it, I got to be willing to give you some assistance in making sure that you do it. Not just say do it and move on. And all the legislators that I know within that lower count communities, we are working very hard, because we do know our resources are going to come up short. And the difference between 100,000 people in a city and 98,000 is lots of money that makes a big difference in the resources coming into a community. So I tell people, like in your filling out the census, that's worth $50,000. So you are causing the city to lose $50,000 or the county to lose $50,000 if you don't fill it out for everyone in your house. So that's what I mean, make it personal. But Zoe is helping us do that in any way that if we say, can you do this? She says, yes. Can I get that? She says, yes. So and I just want to applaud her for the work that she's done in the Capital Region to make those kinds of things happen.
Thank you.
Zoe, can you give us kind of a ballpark figure how much money is at stake here?
So from the Census Bureau, we like to tell everyone overarching, there's $675 billion in federal funding that gets allocated to the states every year. We don't have a specific breakdown for every single state, every single city, you know, what it means per person. We don't have that breakdown at the Census Bureau, but what we do have is that $675 billion in federal funding, and that is a lot of money every year to be distributed and to have up for grabs.
Absolutely, thank you very much. So we have one, it looks like one last question here, Deb. Can I go ahead? So I'm going to give it a shot, and whatever I can't answer, I'm going to throw at Cheryl. So, all right, she looks ready. She's got her mitt up. Okay. The question is, if you are registered to vote in one place, are you able to ever change the location of your registration? So the simple answer is yes, you re-register every single time you move, you have to re-register. So if you just want to change the location of where you're voting from, you can do that anytime you just re-register with the new address as your primary voting address. It is hard for college students, and we've alluded to this a couple of times, and I will spend about a minute on this. Every time you move, you have to re-register. A part of that slate of new changes in 2019 is going to make that a little bit easier. The USPS has been tasked to coordinate with the Board of Elections at the county level to do that a little bit more for you. So if you register your new address with the United States Postal System, which hopefully will continue beyond June, let's hope so, then they will send that information to the Board of Elections, and the Board of Elections will update with your new address. So if you move from Albany County down to New York City, or you move from New York City to, wherever, if you get a job out in Rochester, but you still want to vote in Albany, however you want to manage it, you should be able to do that very easily, or more easily, as we move forward with that. So I think that there's a lot going on with the Board of Elections right now. So I would be very careful and make sure that you check and look where your registration is at before, well before the election, say 2 months before the November election. Check and make sure that you're registered, and that you're registered at the address that you want to be registered at. Cheryl?
So many things. For us, we encourage students to check and see where they're registered, usually in the fall semester as soon as they return to campus. This year will be challenging because we just don't know what fall will look like yet. But TurboVote, that tool that I talked about a little bit earlier, when you put your information in, it asks you very clearly, where do you receive your mail? Where would you like to vote? And then the form says, okay, you are accepting mail here and you want to register here, you need to update your address. Here's how to do it. Essentially, it's re-registering. There's no clearer way to change your address than to pull up that same form that Andy demonstrated a little bit earlier and change your address. It's super important, even for students that live on our campus. As I mentioned earlier, our campus is split into 3 different districts, and you moving from this side of one quad to the other side of the quad is a completely different district. So anytime you move, just to get into the habit of it, change your address on your voter registration form once a year. Just do it. Ask yourself that question. Is this where I want to vote? Is the address here? Is this where I want to make an impact? That's it.
So I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone on this phenomenal panel. We cannot thank you enough for your time, and considering that it has been 100 years since women were granted the right to vote, and considering that Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated was founded 100 years ago, this collaboration could not be more fitting. And so we specifically would like to extend thanks to the College of Arts and Sciences, to Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Omicron Epsilon Zeta Chapter, the League of Women Voters, Andy Lee. You have been amazing. We thank you so much.
The League also celebrates 100 years as well.
Absolutely. We thank you so much. And I'll be turning the mic over to Daphne Amilcar Rodriguez, who has done a phenomenal job of leading the graduate chapter as well. And I just have to say thank you all. Thank you, Office of the Mayor, Eva Bass, How phenomenal are you, right? Thank you so much, New York Regional Census Center. Zoe Bevell, thank you, right? Albany County Legislator, Honorable Carolyn McLaughlin. I have admired you from afar for so long. Thank you so very much. The University at Albany as a whole, UAlbany Votes, Generation Vote, the College of Arts and Sciences again, Professor Julia Jennings of that college, Professor Catherine Lawson of that college, Cheryl Simmons, who I adore. Oh my goodness, Cheryl. We work in so many different areas together. Thank you so much. The CAS Public Engagement Advisory Committee as well, those who are not named. And I specifically want to thank the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Jeanette Altariba. She has been such a firm supporter of all areas of public engagement, and we thank you so very much. Sincerely, Dean Altariba. I'd like to turn it over to Daphne Amilcar Rodriguez, the president of Omicron Epsilon Zeta chapter, to offer remarks.
Dr. Deb, we could not leave this call without thanking you for bringing us together, for orchestrating, facilitating this call, the technology behind the call, and the ITS support that we received. This was phenomenal. Thank you for talking about the 100 years that our organizations have fought to surpass the marginalization of us as women, of us as women of color, of us as minorities. And it is important that we know that our voices and our votes count. And I am sure that this conversation is not over. I am sure that this will be extended through other programs that will go on. And I wish that we continue to collaborate in this effort. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you, and please know that this will be going up on the website. For those of you who registered, you will receive the link to where it will be posted. Joe Bent is not here with us, but Joe Bent has been working extensively behind the scenes. He's been amazing, and we thank you, Joe, but you all will know exactly where it's posted. We will make sure of it. So I will leave you with contact information before you close out. Just have a look at your screen, and again, thank you all. Thank you so much.